When you look back at history, especially the Age of Empires, it feels like European powers were just carving up the globe. But right in the middle of Southeast Asia, one nation did the impossible. It stayed free. So this is the story of Thailand, and how, even though it was completely surrounded and outgunned, it held onto its independence against all odds.
And what's really fascinating is that the biggest clue is hidden right there in its name. The word Thai. It literally means free. And that's not just some random label, right? It's a declaration. It's an identity that was forged through centuries of struggle. And honestly, it's the key to understanding this whole story. So that's the big question, isn't it? How did they pull it off? I mean, European empires were swabbling up country after country. All their neighbors fell. But not Thailand. The answer? Well, it's a total masterclass in smart diplomacy, radical modernization, and making some incredibly tough, almost impossible choices. All right, so to really get how Thailand resisted the West, we've got to rewind way back. We need to go back to its origins, to a time when the fight for freedom wasn't against Europeans, but against its very own neighbors. And this is really where the story kicks off. See, the Thai people had migrated south and were living under the rule of the powerful Khmer Empire. But they weren't going to stay that way. A chieftain named Sri Intraditya basically said enough is enough and founded the Sukhothai kingdom. It was built on one single powerful idea: independence. So you see, this concept of being free was baked into their DNA right from the get-go. But things didn't stay the same for long. Thai power evolved, and it evolved quickly. That first kingdom, Sukhothai, it was all about skilled diplomacy. But the one that came next, Ayutthaya, was a whole different beast. It was way more aggressive, led by an absolute monarch, and its game plan wasn't talking. It was military expansion. And you know what? That aggressive strategy, it absolutely worked. Within just a couple of centuries, Ayutthaya had totally absorbed Sukhothai. It unified the entire region under its powerful, centralized rule. And it was this kingdom, Ayutthaya, that was about to come face-to-face with a brand new and very unfamiliar power from the West. Okay, so now the Europeans show up on the scene. But it doesn't immediately start with a conflict, not at all. At first, it's all about opportunity, about trade. It's this careful, delicate dance between two completely different worlds. And for a while, that dance was going really well. You had the Portuguese arriving back in the 1500s, and they signed a trade treaty. Then the Netherlands followed suit. Ayutthaya even sent its own diplomatic missions to places like Paris and The Hague. For about a century, everything was flourishing. But then, the whole mood just shifted, dramatically. This right here was the turning point. The locals started getting really wary. They looked at French missionaries and saw a threat to their culture. They saw English warships and saw a military threat, and their response was swift and decisive. They basically just cut ties. They walled themselves off from the West for the next century and a half.
But here's the twist. The final blow that brought down this great kingdom, it didn't come from Europe. It came from much closer to home, from their longtime rival, Burma. In 1767, the Burmese army just completely sacked and destroyed the capital city, Ayutthaya. The whole kingdom fell into chaos, and this created a massive power vacuum at the exact wrong time, just as European colonial ambitions were really starting to heat up.
So out of the ashes of Ayutthaya, a new dynasty rises up, the Chakri dynasty, which is actually the same one that still rules today. They started a new kingdom called Siam, and they knew one thing for sure: the old ways just weren't going to cut it. Not if they wanted to survive the storm that was brewing. I mean, just picture the map here. To the west, you've got the British Empire gobbling up Burma and Malaya. To the east, the French are taking over Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Siam was literally the last independent kingdom left, squeezed right between two of the most powerful empires on the planet. Colonization didn't just feel like a risk, it felt completely inevitable. But the Siamese kings, they were smart. They understood the colonial playbook. They knew that these empires would justify taking over by claiming they were civilizing supposedly backward nations. So what was the only defense? You had to prove you were their equal. Siam's challenge was crystal clear: modernize and do it fast. And wow, under King Chulalongkorn, that is exactly what they did. And listen, this wasn't just a fresh coat of paint. We're talking a complete top-to-bottom reinvention of the entire country.
He abolished slavery and the old corvée system. He built a modern standing army and a police force. He set up European-style schools. He completely modernized the legal system and the whole government bureaucracy. He even built the country's first railway network. Every single one of these reforms was a clear message to the West. We are just like you. We are your equals.
But modernizing at home? That was only half the battle. King Chulalongkorn was also an absolute master diplomat. He was a genius at playing the British and the French against each other. He used their own rivalry to Siam's advantage, making sure that neither side could ever get the upper hand and swallow the kingdom whole. It was brilliant. But all this freedom, ma'am, it came at a heavy, heavy price. To protect the core of Siam, the heartland, the king had to make some incredibly painful choices. He had to give up surrounding territories. Lands that are now parts of Laos, Cambodia, and the Malay states were ceded to the British and the French. It was a brutal strategic sacrifice, like losing the limbs to save the heart. So, after masterfully navigating the whole age of imperialism, Siam, which by the way would later be renamed Thailand, entered the 20th century. Its independence was intact, which was a huge victory. But the challenges were far from over. The 20th century was just a whirlwind of new problems. On the world stage, Thailand was a founding member of the League of Nations in 1919. But back home, things were getting shaky. In 1932, a bloodless coup ended centuries of absolute monarchy. Then they had to navigate the impossible choices of World War II, signing a defense pact with Japan. And after the war, well, it was just decades of power struggles, this constant tug of war between democracy and military rule. And that instability, that push and pull, it's continued right into our modern era. The country got hammered by the 1997 Asian financial crisis. The cycle of coups, followed by new governments, just kept repeating. There's been continued unrest, and even a new constitution signed in 2017, which was supposed to restore democracy and create stability, hasn't really stopped the political turbulence. And you know, this brings us right back to where we started. For centuries, the entire fight to be Thai, to be free, was a fight against outsiders. First the Khmer, then the Burmese, then the massive European empires. But today, that challenge has turned inward. The struggle now is all about defining what freedom means inside Thailand. And for a nation whose very name means free, that's the question that will define its future.